Hey everybody, it's your old pal Steve Moore here, owner of RUNMOORE, this fabulous brick and mortar running shop located in Westminster, Maryland. Got a big one today in a lot of different ways. Today we are doing the Hoka Cielo X1 2.0. The Cielo X1 2.0 is the updated version to the, you guessed it, the Cielo X1, which came out early in 2024. This is Hoka's big, long-distance carbon-plated racing shoe. And how big? Well, we'll get into that in just a second here, but this has been a highly anticipated shoe from the Hoka family, and especially here at RUNMOORE as well. There were a lot of things that we liked on the Cielo X1, but there's a lot of things that we did not like. And honestly, and it seemed like in talking to people, there was a lot of people that had a lot of the similar complaints on the X1 that we had. So we're gonna dive in a little bit to talk about how Hoka did or did not address some of the concerns that we had X1 on the Cielo X1 2.0. But first, if you haven't already, do me a solid and like and subscribe to our channel. It's a fun, free, easy way to support the shop. Now, let's dive into it because one of the first big things that have changed on this shoe is the weight. So the Cielo X1 2.0 is an 8.4 ounce shoe in my giant 11.5 foot. This is a 40 mil stack height dropping down to 33 millimeters. So if you are doing the math at home, that is a 7 mil drop shoe. This has a Peba midsole and a carbon plate with a speed-centric meta rocker with a sticky rubber outsole. All right, so I wanted to jump back a second to talk about the weight because that was one of the first things that jumped out to us is this shoe is 20% lighter than its predecessor. This was, for a race day shoe, this did feel a little heavy. Again, for an 11.5, size 11.5 that I wear, this shoe was a 10.4 ounce shoe, and now we've dropped a full 20% down to 8.2. So where did we lose so much weight? Well, it's kind of hard to say because Hoka does place some of the specs on these shoes kind of close to the vest. So we're doing our best assessment here. And you can see they changed some of the pattern on the cutouts that they did here. So they did sort of sleek it up a little bit. They also took away some of the rubber that we had on version 1 from version 2. And again, there is some concerns on wear if you're taking away some of the rubber protection, but the trade-off is you shaved a bunch of weight. So, for me personally, I tend to just get antsy and look for a new carbon plated shoe as opposed to running it into the ground. And so, you might like to think that you're gonna get a couple hundred miles out of a shoe like this, but in reality, if you're somebody who runs, 1 or 2 marathons a year and such, you might just get bored and want something new before you run through this. So I'm not that concerned about losing some of the rubber on this version from the first one if durability was gonna be a main concern for you. I know, again, that's easy to say. It's a $275 shoe, so I know there's gonna be people at home, they're gonna run the crap out of this. But just on a personal thing, I'm not as concerned about the lack of rubber on it. But what I was pleasantly surprised with, when I first saw some of the changes in the outsole and the way it cut out, is that it was going to make it a little less stable, but actually it was sort of the opposite. And if you watch my review on the Cielo X1, I had a lot of problems with it. And one of them being, I felt very unstable in it. For a shoe that was gonna be on my foot for a while, I just felt a lot of topsy-turvy in it. I felt like I had a hard time navigating turns. I talked about how I wouldn't wear the shoe on any course that had a lot of navigation to it. I just felt off balance. And I tried it on the track in a couple different distances. When I was trying to do like 200s and 400s, I was all over the place in this shoe, and they definitely seem to fix it a little bit on this. I don't feel like I'm supinating out as much in it. I also feel just a little bit more secured in it. And again, it's odd because one of the things they did on the Cielo X1 is it had this extra band on the inside here to sort of lock the shoe in. It had like almost a rubber band feel across the whole top of the foot, which I hated, and a lot of other people hated. It just made it hard to get your foot into the shoe. It made what should be a pretty simple thing you do, put foot in shoe, made it unnecessarily awkward, and they fixed that on here. They got away from that, but somehow it still feels a little more sleek and like it hugs you just a little bit better in a positive way, not a narrow way. And I have a big fat foot. And every time I see a shoe that's unisex, which this is, I get concerned it's gonna be cut too narrow to accommodate, both genders in the shoe. But I didn't have that. And I do have that in some racing shoes where I feel just a pinch squeezed in there. Didn't have that concern with this at all. I will also say the upper is way superior. This just felt, I don't know, they just were trying a bunch of stuff and it just didn't quite work for me. This felt heavy and it didn't feel like it moved with your foot. It felt just clumsy. I didn't like the heel cup on it. Again, I'm sorry to crap so much on this shoe, but there was legit concerns with this shoe. This felt like super flimsy, and I felt like I was getting heel rub in there. It kind of reminded me a little bit of like the new Mach X2, where like they just didn't do a good enough job on padding the heel. Well, they corrected it here, and I was doing my usual heading around in 2 different shoes, and I could just feel the heel slippage and the rub on version 1, and none of that on version 2. It just felt like they went back and said, okay, what did people not like? Well, let's make sure we do the opposite over here. So let's pad the heel. Let's change that. Let's change the stupid laces, because again, I've never had a shoe that untied more than the Cielo X1. I mean, it was hard to make it a lap without having to adjust the lacing on it. And this feels like a completely traditional, and not a bad way, lacing system. So the people that had that concern, which was almost everybody I talked to, had some beef with the lacing and upper system on version 1. They fixed all of that. So if you like just the performance of version 1, but you didn't like a lot of the other stuff, well, they did change that. They also changed the drop. You know, for a shoe that Hoka used for a marathon shoe, this was a 10 mil drop shoe, which is really against every single other shoe they have out there. You know, when people come in and ask for Hoka, one of the things is, I can almost always say, they're a mid-drop shoe. They're in that 4 or 5 range in majority of their shoes on the drop. This was a 10 mil drop shoe. This is a 7 mil drop shoe. So it's still a little higher for Hoka, but when I was kind of doing the 1-and-1, I can totally feel the difference between the 2 stack heights here. Like, I felt like I was hitting my foot differently in this, and it just, as a Hoka fan, it just didn't feel very Hoka-esque, where this had that nice smooth glide to it. And also felt like there was more support, more cushion, and a little bit more pop through the forefoot on the new one as well. Lowered the heel. I don't know if it just filled in better, or maybe they shaped the plate a little bit different, but I felt the toe off just a pinch better in version 2 than version 1. So really, they took a lot of the things that we didn't love in version 1, and they fixed it in version 2. And again, this is an important shoe for Hoka, because they're on that cusp of like wanting to be up there with, I hate to say it, with Nike and those guys when it comes to performance race feel. And you know, most of the time, if you're going to you're going to Boston and Chicago and such, you don't see as many people wearing Hoka racers as you do a lot of the other brands out there, or between Nike and Adidas and some of the others. So like, they really want to get themselves back to the front of the pack on the high-end marathon racing shoes, because on the trainers, really for us, like, they dominate. Like, you know, they do a really good job. You go to most major races and you see people wearing Hoka trainers and such, especially more in that middle back of the pack, people that just want the high cushion and function of a Hoka shoe. But the pros and the front guys, not necessarily you're seeing tons of these, but I think they've made a good job of making the proper adjustments that I think when we look back at 2025, when we start looking at some of the major marathons, we're going to see some more people wearing the Cielo X1 2.0 on their feet. Again, hate the name, but I see, but I like all the updates except the 2.0 at the end of the name. So that's my thoughts on the new Cielo X1 2.0 that comes out mid-February of 2025. If you have any questions on this shoe, feel free to leave them down below. I'll try to get back to you as soon as we can. And if you wanted to pick up this fine shoe, enter promo code RUNMOORE at checkout and you'll save 10%, and we'll ship it out for free. And 10% off this shoe is a nice little saving. So feel free to shop local and support RUNMOORE, and we would certainly love you for that. And hey, if you're in the greater Westminster, Maryland area, and why wouldn't you be, stop on by and say hello. There's a good chance you'll catch me while we're here. Happy running, stay safe out there, and as always, we'll see you around town. Thanks so much for watching. Click the videos on the screen to learn more about some related content.